Hello and welcome to my channel. So today is arguably the best day of the week, and it wasn't always like that. Wednesday is always kind of a weird day. If you remember a couple years ago, there used to be this commercial where a camel ran around screaming hump day. Do you guys remember that? Anyway, Wednesday is always kind of like meh, it's in the middle of the week. It's kind of exciting because it's like we're almost at the end, but usually it's normally not very exciting. And I feel like that has changed because Wednesdays are now Abbott Elementary Day, at least in this house. In this year, especially in the apocalypse of 2025, I have found myself really being excited about new episodes of Abbott. I know in the days following the inauguration and all the craziness that took place in the weeks afterwards, Abbott really became my comfort show. Which is interesting for me because when it first came out, I did not like Abbott. I did not fool with it at all. You would not catch me watching an episode. I started in the beginning to support it just to see what it was about, but quickly I tapped out. I did not like the fact that it was Quinta Brunson producing this show. Now, I like Quinta. I've always been a fan ever since her BuzzFeed days. One of my favorites is a skit they did. In fact, I tried to go and watch it a couple weeks ago, but the link I had was bad, so I gotta re-find it. If I find it, I'll put it here. But a skit that they did about what life is like when you've been watching too much reality TV. I used to crack up at that and watch it all the time. I think it came out way back in 2017, when BuzzFeed was still that girl, producing those viral videos, and they had sketch comedy, and they had, Ladylike and BuzzFeed Tasty. I think I still have a cookbook. Yes. Oh, let me not pull a book off the shelf. They'd be crashing to the floor. Let me not do that. But I got myself a BuzzFeed Tasty cookbook one year that was personalized. You could go in and pick the recipes, and I had an apron, and the book had my name on the inside of it. I only made one recipe. But I used to watch anything she did on BuzzFeed. I remember her from her skits, oh, he got money, way back in the day. So I was a fan of Quinta. I wanted to support. But when I saw the subject matter of the show, I got pissed. What business does she have doing a show about education? She didn't fight in the struggle. She ain't been behind enemy lines. She don't know what it's like. She was out there doing BuzzFeed videos and guest starring on ABC comedies, while some of us were fighting for our lives inside the public school district of Los Angeles. She don't know nothing. Secondly, I was willing to accept that somebody besides me came up with a show about working in schools if it was somebody that had been there personally themselves. A great example is Natasha Rothwell. Natasha of How to Die Alone and Insecure and now White Lotus. She was actually a teacher before she got into doing Hollywood, writing, whatever. I will take this from her. I will. But I honestly, if I have to be honest with you, I always thought if I did anything in the TV atmosphere, it would be something like with education and my experiences there. When I first started doing YouTube, people were like, oh man, you need to do some teacher skits. You were always so funny about what was going on in education. You always had the best stories. True. I think most teachers do have crazy stories, but my social media journey ended up being more of a journey of just my personal life and discovering myself. And so I sort of left that behind, but that does not mean I did not feel extra bitter when I saw that was the show that she came out with. I was like, girl, where do you get what you don't have the right. And then I found out that her mother was a Philadelphia public school employee and that she'd watched her mom deal with things all these years, and she had taken them and stored them, and through that developed this outlet for displaying in some way the realities of working in public schools. So I was like, all right, Quinta, you're forgiven. You're forgiven. Okay, I'll support it. I'll watch it. So I did watch it. And like I said earlier, immediately I tapped out. And this is because, and this is something I think a lot of teachers can actually relate to. I think a lot of people, period, if you ever have a show come out that is about your workplace, it's hard to watch it because it just hits too close to home. I've seen a lot of teachers talk about how they don't enjoy getting off of work and then tuning into a show about school. And I totally understand. In fact, when Abbott first came out, I think it was 2021, I had just left the classroom And I left for a reason. I was not interested in, oh, let me go dig back into this. Let's talk more about how the districts won't give you no money. Let's talk more about how you have to fight to do the basics for your students. Let's talk more about how the facilities can be run down sometimes. I can't wait to talk about overcrowd. Like, I just was not, it was not what I wanted to watch. And like I said, I've seen other teachers express this. I've also seen people that work in like the medical field talk about how they don't be wanting to watch Grey's Anatomy. They don't be wanting to watch, The Pit. They don't want to, because it's too close to home. Now, on the other hand, some people, they watch it because they feel understood, and it's the same things that happen at their job. So they're like, oh yes, I love this, and you guys really get it. Thank you. I feel seen. But on that note, I also didn't like Abbott Elementary because I felt like it wasn't the same stuff that actually happens in schools. Like, yes, there were definitely some similarities, and I was like, all right, y'all got it. All right. Yeah. Like I mentioned before in my very first review of the show, I talked about how I had a Miss Howard at my first teaching job. And, it was a very similar situation. I talked about how I'd been in a lot of situations like Janine, where I was trying to get things done for the kids and people were like, won't you shut up? That's too much energy. Well, why don't you just shut up? So I knew how that was. I even literally, there was an episode where they were doing like a step team performance, or they're practicing for the step team, and the room that they practice in. Now I know Abbott is shot in LA. I've actually done like the backlot tour at Warner Brothers. So I got to see, the building, and they take us to the soundstage where they film it on. There wasn't anything up at the time, but the room that they used as the set for when she's practicing with the girls, I literally have a picture like that because that's where I used to practice when I coached cheer. So a lot of it, I was like, yeah, this is close. But some stuff was so fake and so unlikely that, again, as a teacher who was in the struggle, I was like, oh, I can't take this serious. How do these teachers have so much free time? I remember when we would get a lunch, yes, we would gather together. There was a specific, sometimes people will say, and I've said this too, why is it just them that gather together? And that's how I was with my coworkers that I talk to all the time. Like, we would eat lunch together every single day. Me and a close friend now, but when we started off as coworkers, if we were both at work, we were having lunch together every single day for 4 years. So I get that. But they be having time to go off campus and grab pizzas and I remember there was an episode where Ava came back from being at Harvard next door using the Harvard Wi-Fi to get a special certificate for administration or whatever. And she came back and she was like, no more off-campus lunches. Off-campus lunches as a teacher? Are you serious? What are you talking about? There is barely any time. The last school I worked at, by the time you got your car out of the parking lot, lunch was over. Like, it took so long to open the gate and lock it back and unlock it by the time you got to the stop sign to just head out to a McDonald's or to wherever else might be close to you, girl, lunch was over. You didn't have no time. There was no time for no off-campus lunches. So DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, those were your closest friends if you wanted to do something off-campus. Otherwise, you brought your lunch every single day. So that bothers me. And just in general, they seem to have a lot of free time, even if it's not about lunch, where they gather and they'll just sit around and they talk and they'll work things out. And it's just a lot of free time. And also, none of them teach, I think Quinta's character, Janine, and then Miss Shementi, they teach the same grade level, I believe. But Barbara's in kindergarten. Jacob got damn near high schoolers. Who does Gregory teach? Like, it's just, where are the department meetings? Where are what's going on? Why y'all got all this free time? And on that note of departments, they're missing a lot of staff at the school. I know there's been a conversation about them hiring a counselor. So we know we're going to get a counselor character. But where's the PE teacher? Where's the special ed coordinator? Where's the school nurse? Where's the nurse? And where is the assistant principal? I'm sorry, but Ava's office would be filled with people all the time at a school like Abbott. You work at a school where you got kindergartners all the way to 8th grade and ain't nobody in the principal office? Ain't nobody got an issue. Where are the student fights? Where are the fights? There may have been an episode or two about a fight. I don't know. Something's coming to my mind. Something. If it happened, I'll put it here on the screen. But for the most part, when I worked in a middle school, them kids trying to fight every day. They trying to fight every single day. That principal's office, you walk in there and you're like, oh, I just wanted to know if it's going to be a kid in there working on some kind of paper. Somebody got kicked out. Somebody doing the level of discipline management that's not necessary in this utopia that is Abbott Elementary is something that is deeply triggering for me. Just to be honest, I'd be like, these children are very quiet. It's almost like they're actors on a set. Okay. Just going back to this assistant principal thing, there would absolutely be somebody who handled normally, if you've never worked at a school, normally you have a principal that's in charge of like all the administrative stuff. So they're making sure the attendance is right. They're making sure the testing is done. They're making sure that. Then you have a principal that's all about the behavioral stuff. At the last school I worked at, we called them the deans. So they may not know nothing about what's going on with testing, but all behavior issues go directly to them. And then you have a principal that's kind of about like staff management and making sure people have funding. And usually those are like the coordinators of various programs or, whatever. But that's also included in like an administrative umbrella. Why is Ava the only administrator? So as you can see, I struggled initially with Abbott. I was like, this is realistic, but it's not real enough. And the thing that got me, and this is something I said initially when this is my third video about Abbott Elementary since it's been out. I made a video 2 years ago where I said it was the best show on TV. And here's why. In not including some of that other messier stuff. So in not having the huge discipline issues and not maybe employing situations where there has to be a lot of administrative overstep, maybe in having opportunities where teachers can rest and they don't seem to be overworked, because that's a big thing. If you go into schools, teachers struggling with grading, never having time to eat. A lot of us ate at our computers with our food up to our faces like this while we're trying to struggle to get our grades in. That energy is kind of gone from Abbott. They have time to do costume contests in the auditorium. They have time to, they want to attend PTA meetings where they do line dances. The teachers and the principal get together and they laugh and they joke and they spend holidays together, which I've spent holidays with my coworker, none of the principals, but I've spent holidays with coworkers before. So that's not that far off. But in general, the vibe of Abbott is hearts don't break around here. We have a good time. This is a happy place. So yes, there might be realities in the school, in the working world, but we are including them as they serve our narrative. Abbott is a happy place. That's the narrative. That's why it's the best show on TV, because when you watch it, it's not trying to break your heart. It's not trying to overwhelm you. It's not trying to, oh my God, I can't believe what I just watched. Like some of the popular shows right now, we've got White Lotus, we've got The Pit, we've got, what else? Paradise. When people tell me about those shows, they're like, you got to watch. I don't need to be more stressed out. I don't need to watch it right now. Maybe I'll watch it later. Maybe in 2029. Maybe, if we're still allowed to watch TV then. I found Abbott very unrealistic, so I didn't like it initially. But I had to employ a suspension of disbelief. I had to do what you have to do so often when you watch any kind of TV show, any kind of movie. You have to say, you know what? I know that this person can't actually freeze time and walk through it, but hey, I'm watching the show. That's what it is. Hey, you know what? I know that these people probably couldn't afford this apartment, but hey, I'm watching the show. This is where they live. Suspensions of disbelief are not rare. And I decided to go ahead and apply my talent for it to Abbott. And I really haven't looked back since. I have loved it. Like I said, it's my comfort show right now. I try to never miss an episode. I find myself watching things multiple times because you really need that dopamine these days. But there is one situation, one dynamic of the show that I do have to work hard. I did have to work hard on, which was the unrealistic portrayal of romantic relationships in the show. I literally went from kind of being bitter about how unrealistic it was to being happy about the lack of realism, because within the lack of realism, or within the way that they portrayed it, they actually demonstrated some very, very healing and helpful communication tactics and emotional responses for people like myself that have been through tough things in their romantic lives. So let me be specific. Janine and Gregory, for me, are unrealistic because Janine is a woman who is supposedly under 30, who is single and a teacher, and Gregory is a man who is supposedly under 30, who is single and a teacher, and they're not already married and pregnant with either their own baby or somebody else's baby. When you've worked in a school, you know that they are matrimony and pregnancy hot houses. The amount of teachers who will be out, marriages that happen, folks will be single when they start the job, married on their first baby by the time y'all get to Christmas break. It is amazing. In fact, it's one of the reasons why when I was around 30, I decided to go back into teaching. I had played around for a little bit from my mid to my late 20s with what I was going to ultimately do with my life. And around 30, I decided to go back because, well, I needed a job, but also I wanted some of that good juju. I wanted some of that marriage and matrimony and baby making juju that teachers seem to have. Those institutions follow teachers around like a magnet. I mean, it is crazy. If you get to a certain age and you are still single and unmarried as a teacher, not only are you the outlier when it comes to the staff. I was the only one at my last school. Everybody was married with babies or whatever. And that, made me feel real nice. But you're the outlier when it comes to the staff. The staff might notice and not say anything, but the kids gonna definitely notice. Ooh, they gonna call you out and they gonna notice because it's not normal. Normally in those situations, people be booed up and locked up. And then if a single man is a teacher, and he seems like he's not crazy and he likes women, he is going to be hunted down like tickets to the Cowboy Carter World Tour. Do you have tickets? Who's going? I still don't know if my ticket is even real. I'm very confused. But that is such a prime resource. That don't happen. By the time a man gets to Gregory's age in the schoolhouse, he got a baby mama. He got two. He's married. He got a baby mama and he's married. Sometimes at the same time. The level of cheating these men are able to get away with is crazy. There was a man who at one of my jobs who he'd be cheating on his wife and he'd be like, I'm single. I'm trying to tell y'all I'm single. And my friend had to look at his ring finger and she saw, like a tan line basically. And that's how she figured out, no, he really is lying. There's a wife somewhere. And then it'd be people being that age and still being single and still being open to a relationship where it's just the two of y'all is extremely rare. Every school I've been at, it's rare. And so that was the first thing that made me kind of go to Janine and Gregory. I was like, ain't no way. But we decided to make a way. We decided to suspend disbelief and we decided to look at this couple. And there's so much that I gathered from them. And I'm going to get to it in a second. But I want to talk about another couple. And that is Ava and Oshan. So I love Ava. I think Janelle, the lady that plays Ava, reminds me of the kind of black women I grew up watching on TV. Ooh. That's something that I love about Abbott. I love that you have these unambiguously black women, these darker skinned black women who are loved, who are in good relationships, who are desired, and who are not struggling when it comes to that part of their life. No, everything's not hunky-dory. We know Janine has issues with her family. We know Ava now has issues with her father. We know that, it's not perfect. We know Barbara has what's going on with her daughter and transitioning to being a grandma and that whole thing. And they have family stuff. But as far as their romantic lives are concerned, they are not being made to look foolish. They're not being made to look stupid. It's no struggle love around here. Now, I do think the first season, Janine did have a little bit of struggle love with Tyreek. And so I don't know if it was a conscious effort by the writers to say, we don't want Janine to go down this road as a character, or because she's a black woman on TV. Like, we don't need to really see this. Or if it was just what they did. But I do like that they changed that out. She don't need a broke bum who wants to be a rapper as a boyfriend. Give her somebody who is an equal match. Let her have a chance. I think that that's great. But Ava and Oshan made me upset initially because if there's no way Gregory would be single, there's no way in Oshan would be single. There is no way. No way. No way. No way. You have a man who looks like that, who has a job, who has a floating job, where he goes around from school to school to school, working on, helping people out. So he got to get in your face. He got to be in the room. He got to come. He's supposed to be single? Sure. He takes one step in a school, and once again, the hunters are out. They're going to be asking questions. They're going to be, when I was a teacher, I'm not getting into it, but there is no way. But he's single, and he is interested in Ava. Now, that's not a far stretch. She's gorgeous, and her clothes are amazing, and as the youths say, her body is tea. So that's not hard. But the fact that a man that looks like that, and that has the job that he has, which ain't a lot, but it's something, is able to be honest and forthcoming and vulnerable and the sane one in the situation. Like, she doesn't have to fear him. He's the one that corrects her. Once again, I had to just kind of suspend my disbelief and invest in what the writers were doing, because it ended up being worth my time. And now I'm going to bring us to the point of this video, which is how a recent episode, so it would be last week's episode, provided a real opportunity for healing for me. If you watched last week's episode, it was the karaoke episode. And number one, this meant so much to me because anyone that knows me knows I love karaoke. I always make sure to have a wireless mic around in my life somewhere in case I want to burst into song and my voice needs to be amplified when I do it. I love going to karaoke bars. It is hard when you're around people who don't sing at all, because it's awkward when you're up there acting like it's your own personal concert, and then somebody else gets up there and they sound like they need an oxygen tank or some iron or something, like they're fading fast. So it shapes the dynamic in a specific way, but I still love it. I love to do karaoke. I've always loved it. The fact that they were going to do that was fantastic. I loved the selection of songs that they did. And most importantly, I loved all of the relationship growth that I got to see from various characters, from Janine and Gregory to Ava and O'Shawn, even our boy Jacob. He got to grow in a specific way, and I loved it. So I'm going to start with Janine and Gregory. According to the internet, Janine is displaying or displays anxious attachment. I tend to stay away from attachment style conversations because I feel like it's a lot of armchair therapy, armchair psychiatrists, people that learned something, they learned a word, they learned a couple details, and now they throw it at any situation where they feel like somebody should have been a little cooler when they were handling that. So a person who's naturally just a little bit more intense and excited, maybe a little neurotic, is labeled with this thing, and people don't let up. Once they see or they think, oh, you have an anxious attachment, then it's incredibly invalidating to anything else that you might feel or that you might do. And I speak from experience because when I share certain things about my life, people, they come out of the woodworks. They're like, let me not provide the analogy I want to provide, but it becomes very old and very recycled and very regurgitated commentary. It's like, yeah, I get it. You think I could have been chiller here. But what I feel like what people often ignore is a lot of times when someone is not chill, when they are responding anxiously, it's because they're dealing with someone or something or in a situation where they may have been let down before. They may have been hurt before. They may have been left hanging before. They're dealing with something that may have traumatized them in some way. And so they're not reacting with the most chill of attitudes. They might be dealing with something that is new territory for them. It might be something that they're not sure if it's going to work out. I think if you're going to slap a label on someone, you need to also be willing to understand, what have you experienced? Instead of saying, this is what's wrong with you, you need to also say, what happened to you? And I don't feel a lot of people do that, especially on the internet. But I have learned that people think that Janine has an anxious attachment style. And I can see maybe where that's coming from. And what I loved about this episode is that Janine puts together this karaoke night and she's so excited, and her and Gregory have practiced. And this might be the first time she gets to perform a karaoke duet with him, a karaoke duet with a boyfriend. At one point in the episode, she says, I grew up as a very lonely High School Musical fan, so I'm used to having to do these things by myself. And I can't speak enough to how it feels when you have always thought about doing something with someone and you've never gotten the chance. And so it looks like you're finally going to get this chance, and then it looks like it's not going to happen. It's very hard to just chill out in those situations. And so so I'm not the kind of person to say, "Oh, Janine, watch that anxious attachment." That's not me. That's not my personality. But that's what people will do. So what I love about this episode, and if you didn't see it, here's a spoiler. 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 Gregory, he has gotten a job. He has gotten a job to supposedly make more money because, he's like, I have a girlfriend now, and this teacher salary ain't cutting it. And that's real. That's why you don't see a lot of men as teachers, because men are motivated by money and competition and this and that, and education oftentimes doesn't provide that. So you don't really see them in that position unless they get to be coaches, which provides a stipend, and it's a whole thing. There are studies done. But Gregory's like, look, the teaching really ain't paying. I have a girlfriend. I need to get my money up. And he decides to become a rideshare driver. They don't say if it's Uber or Lyft or anything. They don't really, I don't think they give it a name, but he is doing deliveries and picking people up. That's what he's doing. And he has to decide, do I keep making money because we've got surge pricing and I need to meet these financial goals? Or do I also take a moment to focus on my personal goals with this woman who cares about me? And once again, remember, the motto of Abbott Elementary in my mind is, hearts don't break around here. This is a happy place. This is a happy show. So what do you think is going to happen? That's right. Gregory's not going to put money first. He's not going to put that goal first. He's going to put Janine first. And I want to be honest with you. That's how you heal a person who responds anxiously to things. Not by just telling them, you're anxious. Why don't you chill? Yeah, why don't you try and chill? But by having them actually experience situations where someone says, I see you. I see how you feel. I see this is important to you. Here's how I'm going to respond. And it be a response that directly impacts how they felt about the situation. You're not going to be anxious about something that turns out for your good.
Okay, so I did want to interrupt myself here because that's actually bullshit. You can still be anxious about anything at any time. Anxiety is literally the fear of the unknown and that you can't control the variables that surround you. That's like the roots of anxiety. I watched Inside Out. I know what I'm talking about. But I just want to say that I do think that's something that's missing in the attachment style conversation, especially how I see it carried out online, is the importance of emotionally corrective experiences. So if you are so nervous about whether or not somebody's going to show up for you, having someone show up for you might actually be really helpful. If it makes you anxious to complete a certain act or chore or responsibility, completing it and having it work out might go a long way in healing you in that situation. I can speak for myself when it comes to experiences that I've had at work. I know when I started the job working in LA a couple years ago, the teaching job, I was so anxious for time in between the bell and for after school. Because when I worked in Texas, in between the bells, we had to be outside of our classroom, standing in the hallway, monitoring whatever the kids did in class. After school, you had an after school duty. You had to walk the students all the way out of the building. And if you weren't doing your after school duty, whatever it was, you got written up. At lunchtime, you had to walk the kids down to lunch. There was a lot of monitoring that we had to do. So when I got on the campus, I didn't do anything but ask questions about monitoring. I was like, okay, where do I stand after school? And they were like, what do you mean after school? And I was like, well, where's my duty? They had no idea what I was talking about. And I got told to calm down several times. But because of where I had been and the fact that it added so much more onto my responsibilities as a teacher and as a coach and as a this and as a that, I was like, no, just give me the assignment. And so I know it. But I didn't have the same assignment there. Things were different. So that anxiety, that feeling of like dread, that feeling of, ugh, was healed. It went away because I had an emotionally corrective experience. And a lot of times that part of the attachment conversation is left out. People will jump for joy to label you anxious attachment, or label themselves. But I don't think we put enough emphasis on the fact that you didn't start out that way. Something happened to you. And so as much as we want to be cognizant and aware of the wrong ways we're responding to something, that's very important. but also consider why you're responding that way. What about this situation is triggering you? What about this situation is bringing on the need to want to control? Label yourself, fine. Realize what's going on, recognize your triggers, but also understand that healing does not happen alone. Healing happens in community, and it happens through emotionally corrective experiences. Just never forget that. Anyway, back to the video.
What kind of women they got in this writer's room? Because it's unrealistic, but also it's really great and it's healing to see. And it reminded me of when I used to watch Grey's Anatomy as a young woman. You have these men who would make these really emotional speeches to women and talk about how in love they were, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get out in real world and that's not what it's always like. And I had to take a step back and I had to say, Stephanie, a lot of the shows that you've watched where men are really emotional and really intense and open and vulnerable, they're written by women. It's not, you're not actually watching like this is not a documentary. It's a show written by women for the female gaze. So I started to think about that for a lot of shows that I loved, that a lot of the behaviors of men on those shows that I loved, those were behaviors that were written. They weren't necessarily true or likely to happen. And when it's written a specific way, sometimes it does come from people's personal experience, but sometimes it also comes from what somebody wishes someone might have done for them. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there was a woman in that Abbott writing room who said, you know what, one time I was going to have this party and I really wanted my man to come. And he had to work and I wanted him to show up so bad because I had this thing planned and he chose to go to work instead. And I knew why he had to do it, but I wish he would have come. I bet there's so many people who have lived that reality. So seeing that happen for Janine was incredibly healing for me. And then, of course, the song that they went into, which was What Would I Be Without You, it was so romantic for me. And then it like healed something in the high school version of me as well. It was a big song when I was when I was in high school 90 years ago. So I love that. I love the Janine and Gregory story. Extremely healing, believable, but very healing. Let's talk about Ava and Oshan. This really speaks to me, not only because of the physicality of Ava and Oshan, and how they look together, etc. And I won't go any further than that. We'll just leave that there. But again, like I said, normally in real life, I feel like Oshan would be the villain. In your everyday life, in real life, and tell me it's not true. You see a man that looks like that, he got a couple baby mamas. He probably lived with one of them. Maybe he rotates. He got some kids, okay? So he don't have a lot of money to do a lot of stuff. So he's probably looking for women that make more money than him. I don't know. Y'all can tell I'd have met some. Woo! But mostly, I would think that he wouldn't really take like relationships seriously. And if he did, he'd be in one, babe. Men that look like that, they don't be out here. In my experience, that man would not be single. Like, anyway. I also love the fact that like he in some way matches her. She's incredibly intelligent. I love the way they have written this character. She's not just materialistic. She's not just whatever. Ava is smart and she's resourceful and she loves really niche things. And I love that he immediately understands that. Like when he first comes to the school, he's like, where'd you get all this equipment from? Like this technology? How do you know none of the processors? Who am I dealing with here? I love that because I think that that's like actually an organic moment, regardless of how people look, regardless of whatever. When you meet somebody that matches you in a specific way, that's really, really unique to you and no one else in your environment like is on y'all same level, that can be very sexy. And it is a point of connection. So I like that. And I think that's why she takes him seriously. I think it's very easy for her to push people away. Ava has been painted by the internet as an avoidant. So that's another attachment style term. And once again, I don't really stop there when it comes to people. I'm not really like, oh, you're an avoidant. Sounds like an avoidant. Ugh, avoidance. My whole thing is, what happened to you? Okay, because until you address what happened, you're never going to make better decisions. And usually also you have to experience something different to make a better decision. So it's two things. It's let's address how you got here and let's address what kind of situation you need to be in to maybe correct this behavior. And I think for Ava, number one thing is she needs to be in a situation where she respects someone because she is so pretty, because she has been able to get by in life and do whatever. I mean, she makes it to be a principal, and does she even have a degree? I remember when Gregory, like in the first season, says, I have a master's. She's like, I don't even have one of those, which also made me upset because if you know, being in schools, not only to be a principal, do you have to have a master's, you have to go through principal certification, you have to get, it's a whole thing. So that also pissed me off. She's been able to get by in life because she's quick. She never slips, she never falls, and she has to meet somebody who she feels she respects, who it would hurt her if they got away. I think for avoidant people, it's easy to be like, oh, it's whatever. It's not a big deal. And I think it's because this is just my assumption, but they might have lost something early on in life or someone, and they had to just get over it and move on. And the easiest way for them to move on was to involve themselves with people who don't really matter that much to them. However, with Oshan, this is someone that she doesn't want to lose, which is the first step, I feel, to correcting that behavior. But the behavior really gets corrected when they go out to this restaurant, which is another thing I loved, because if you'll remember, when Oshan, if you watch the show, when he first wants to go on a date with her, Janine and Gregory are like, yo, if you want to go on a date with Ava, you need to be prepared. And they're giving him all these like preposterous things he needs to do to be worthy of her, because they know Ava has luxury taste. She has this, she has that. What they don't know is she's already decided that he's worthy. So as long as he comes with some kind of action, she's going to be okay. But they know Ava. And what we don't know as an audience is we don't know that Oshan speaks different languages. We don't know a lot about him yet. We just know that he is mentally on par with her and that he looks like that, right? So we're rooting for them. Anyway, they get to this restaurant and Ava's being an asshole to him. She's being such an asshole. And I'm going to tell you guys, because I have dealt with, I haven't even, because of my particular experiences, I can already see in this situation how many bonus points, brownie points, gold stars that this man deserves. He is doing so many things that I have literally said, well, damn, if they only did this, who knows how far we go. And there's so many things that he's done so far. So for her to get to this date and immediately start treating him the way she was treating him, it was just, I was hurt. Like, I think my chest started hurting. I got so upset. And there was a way they could have taken this. Oshan could have gotten mad at her and walked out and been like, no, I'm not fooling with her, which is probably something that would have happened in real life. He could have walked out, left the date. But instead, he keeps trying. He keeps trying to talk to her, and she's throwing him off. She's giving him, the jokes, and she's not showing up as a vulnerable person yet, which can be hard when you're not used to having to do that. She's probably used to having to do dates where she just has to be pretty, tell a couple jokes. The man can't keep up anyway. She makes him pay for whatever, and then she leaves. But again, this is somebody she doesn't want to lose. So when he says, hey, we won't go out again because you're rude to me. You've been making fun of me. You don't like that I laugh. You don't like that I've spoken Japanese, at this Japanese restaurant. You don't like the food. You're complaining about ridiculous things. And I thought that you might loosen up, but you're not. You've gone in a different way. And I don't like this. So we don't have to do this again. And again, the writers could have chosen to make Ava be upset, to bristle, and you don't know what you're talking about or whatever. But there was a moment here that was so beautiful to me, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but she looks at him and you can just see her face where she registers what she's going to lose if she doesn't check her behavior. And friends, I'm going to tell you this makes all the difference. Because when they go outside and they're waiting on a car and she's like, you don't have to wait for me. And he's like, of course I'm going to wait for you. Just a good dude. Very unrealistic. Very unrealistic. It's not real. They're not real. He's not real. They're not real. Anyway, but he's like, I'm gonna wait for you. It's fine. And then she finally decides to open up. Hey, my dad sucks. This is this. I'm not joking anymore. I'm just being real with you. And I love how she looks at him after she tells him about her dad. And he says to her, thank you for telling me that. Thank you for being honest with me. And another thing that's so great is, honestly, that's all he wanted. He just wanted to know, is there a real person underneath all the jokes and the teasing and the avoidance? Who's really there? And are you going to always use me and make me a punching bag? Or are you going to try and get to know who I really am? And in that moment, every question is answered. And they like each other enough to continue on with the date. and then they meet everybody over for karaoke. I loved that. That was incredibly healing because once again, you have a situation that could have gone another way. You probably have people who know what it's like to be on both sides. Hey, I was really trying and that person kept throwing things at me. Hey, you know what? I am who I am and he could have dealt with it. But the writers chose, how can we make this a situation where they walk out together instead of separating? I loved it. It made me wish I had a writing team for my life. It really did. I want to talk about the last character that the character arc or the growth that I saw that I loved, and it's with Jacob. So we know Jacob had a boyfriend for a little while, and they broke up, and he sees his ex at this karaoke place, and immediately Jacob runs into something that I feel like it's a normal thing, it's a natural thing, but we like to pretend that it's not. It's when you meet somebody from your past and they've gone so much further than you. They've learned so much more than you. They've grown so much more. And that can be very painful depending upon what your relationship was like with them when y'all knew each other. And in Jacob's case, they were together and this man couldn't do all this. And now that they're apart, oh my gosh. And it doesn't help that like he's written a play about their relationship called Got Out, which is of course a play on Get Out, the movie Get Out. And while they're talking about all the changes Zach has been able to make while Jacob has kind of stayed in the same place, Take Me or Leave Me from Rent plays. And I don't know if you know that song, but the song is all about, hey, I was a catch. You should have been happy when you had me. You don't have me anymore. Don't forget, whatever. That's kind of the vibe. And so Jacob walks away from that feeling dejected and let down, which causes him to launch into a song that immediately, once again, thrusted me back into high school, which was My Last Resort by, God, what were they called? Oh, man. It was a huge song back in the day when I was in high school, 90 years ago. Abbott, you can tell, is written by millennials. 100%. Anyway, so we see Jacob go through this and eventually he gets to a point where he decides, I have to move on with my life too, which inspires him to go out and ask for someone's number. The person's number that he got is an internet celebrity named Jabuki. I had never seen Jabuki's face. I'd only seen like his tweets. But anyway, Jacob learns he has to move on. He had that experience, but he needs to move on. Ava learns that you can't avoid things your whole life or you're going to lose an opportunity to be with someone who you actually might really enjoy. And Janine learns that, hey, the right person will see your needs and will choose you. And I just felt it was incredibly healing. A couple days afterwards, I was scrolling on Threads as I do, and I saw this thread and I was like, this is it. And this conversation is what's normally missing when we talk about attachment styles and when people throw that out on to folks on the internet. And it's normally missing anytime we talk about anything that has to do with romantic situations and how people might respond with negative behaviors based on past experiences. And that is, yes, realizing your fault is important. Yes, realizing where you could act better is important. Yes, realizing how you respond to certain things is important. But it's also important to be given situations where you are inspired to be the best part of yourself. So where you're in a situation with someone who you trust, who keeps your needs in mind, who you actually are really compatible with, and who is excited to be with you and wants to give you the space to rise to the occasion. It's a very healing thing for me. I loved seeing it demonstrated. And even though I find every single relationship, except for Jacob, every single relationship them women got, I say, ooh, that's improbable. Sean would have 7 kids. Gregory would not be single. I still love the choices that the writers have made. And I'm going to post this the same day that Abbott is on the air, probably at the same time. But I will always be seated for Abbott, always. I'm looking forward to when they bring the counselor on because their casting is amazing. Every time they have a guest person, Cree Summer, really as a librarian, every time they have a guest person, it is amazing. So I'm excited to see what they do. And honestly, I feel like we need 8 seasons and a movie. That's what I feel like we need to combat the terrible things that are happening. Ooh, maybe Megan of Sussex can come on and do a cooking class for the kids. Just put all my comfort things right there together. That would make me feel nice. All right, I am off to edit this so I can post it and then watch the next episode of Abbott. As always, thank you for watching.